On the day I got married, I saw a lot of people that I hadn't seen in a long, long time. I saw some friends from college that I hadn't seen in a couple years, and I saw some old relatives that I hadn't seen in a couple years. But there was one guy who was there that I hadn't seen in a long, long time. And I mean, it seemed a really long time. In fact, I didn't remember this guy's name. I didn't recognize him. The only reason that I knew that he was there to see me, like the groom side of the wedding, is because he came up to me at the reception and said, "Congratulations, Ben," and he gave me this big hug, and he gave me my wedding present, which was like the most luxurious towels you have ever seen in your whole life. I mean, they were unbelievable. It was like floating on a cloud when you dry it off. Amazing, but that's not the point. The point is, I thought that this guy at first was like a wedding crasher, and I was like, how cool is this? I have a wedding crasher at my wedding. Like, it doesn't seem like the wedding you would want to crash, and this guy seems really old for that, but it's cool nonetheless. And then I kind of made the connection, the light bulb went off, and I realized that this guy had been good friends with my parents a long, long time ago, like when I was a kid, like a very, very young kid. And so I just guessed my mom had either called him or sent him an invitation, and that's why he showed up. But a couple days after our wedding, Holly and I were having a conversation about people who were at our wedding and people we saw at the reception. And she asked, "What about that dude who brought us those towels?" And I was like, "Are you talking about like the towels from heaven?" She was like, yeah. And I'm like, unbelievable towels. Anyway, I was like, yeah, that guy was friends with my family like back in the late 70s, early 80s. And she asked, what in the world was he doing there? And I said, I have no idea. And it was so interesting to us to talk about why in the world that guy would have shown up at our wedding. And see, you've probably done this before. Like you've seen somebody at a concert or like a social event, or you saw them at a birthday party and you were thinking in your head, or maybe you said to one of your friends out loud, like, what in the world are they doing here? It doesn't seem like they should be here. Maybe there's a guy at your high school like who graduated like 5 years ago, but he keeps showing up at like high school student only events. Like he comes to like pep rallies and he wants to go on your senior class trip or something, and you're like, dude, this doesn't really make sense. So it happens all the time. We see people and we wonder what in the world they're doing here. And there are a group of you, probably those of you who are core faithful inside outers, who sometimes you look around on a Sunday night and potentially you ask that same thing. You see different people and you wonder, what in the world are they doing here? Why is he here? Why is she here? And the reason why you wonder that is because you hear stories about them. Like you hear what people say about them, like you know the kind of people they hang out with, like you know what they have reputations for, like you see what other people write on their Facebook page, you see what they write on other people's Facebook pages, and you're just thinking, man, maybe not all of that is true that I hear about them, but if just some of it is true, that is crazy. And then it gets even more frustrating sometimes because maybe you see them like raising their hands during the worship songs, or maybe they're in your small group and you hear them in your small group like talk about all the right things. And in your mind, you're just thinking, what happens inside these walls doesn't seem to match up with what happens outside of these walls. In fact, maybe you're here and you're not a Christian, and one of the reasons why is because you've encountered some Christians who do this. They say you hear them say one thing and you see them do another, or you hear them stand up against something and then they engage in something else that's just as bad, and you just think, man, Christians are hypocrites. Like why would I want to be a part of that? Maybe you were involved in Inside Out for a season and you were there for a while, and then you saw a lot of this, and you saw people doing one thing or saying one thing and doing another. And you just thought to yourself, you know what? Those people are fake. That place is fake. Those people, it's not lining up. That place is full of hypocrites. I'm out of here. I want to talk about a very short verse in the Bible, and then we'll kind of discuss this for a second. In fact, if you're here and you have like a pretty good memory, you could probably remember or memorize this verse by only hearing it a couple of times. It's in the book of Romans, chapter 3, verse 23, and it says this: all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Again, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. In fact, I want you to say that with me. Well, I recognize I'm on video, so you can't say it with me. You'd have to go back in time because I recorded this a couple days before you. Okay, never mind. I just want you to say it out loud. You ready? All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Now, there's a couple things going on in this verse. The first thing is it talks about how we've all sinned, all of us. And I think we'd all agree with that. You'd all say, yeah, I've made some mistakes. I've done some things I shouldn't have done. Maybe even today. Maybe today you said some things that weren't entirely true. Or maybe today you got jealous of a friend and you started talking about them behind their back. Maybe today you lost your temper with your stepmom. And so you're agreeing right now, yeah, we've all sinned. I'm a part of that. But how it typically works for us is we think about this on a comparison scale. You think about your sinning compared to his sinning or her sinning, and you'd say, well, yeah, I've done some of these things, but, I don't sleep around. I didn't sneak out of my house and do something dangerous. I'm not popping pills. So compared to him or her, I'm doing pretty good. It's like guys in a weight room on the bench press. One guy benches 250 and he's around like a couple guys who bench 175. So all of a sudden he's feeling pretty good, and he's rolling up his sleeves and he's making fun of them and calling them girls, and like he's grunting like Serena Williams when he benches, yeah, like roid rage kind of deal. And then this guy who benches 250, now he finds himself in a weight room or at a gym, or he's in college with some guys who bench 350. And now all of a sudden he's unrolling his sleeves and they're the one making fun of him, and he's not grunting anymore. He's just doing the bench press, breathing, no more grunting for him. It's just different. It's a comparison game. You can bench more than them. You don't bench as much as them, and that's how it works for us. We can look, there's some people who are worse than us. There are some people who are better than us. And in a world of 6.5 billion people, there's a lot of comparing you can do. There's a lot of good people out there and a lot of bad people that you could compare with. But this verse, it takes all of us, and it puts us into one category. We have all sinned. And then it says, and fall short of the glory of God. Now, that's kind of complicated. I want to think about this for a second. All of us, if you take the good things that we think we've done, the bad things that we know we've done, and you compare it to the glory, just the rightness, the goodness, the perfection, the love, the wisdom of our God, our Lord, our Father, and then you come way back down here and you think about like the good things and the bad things and our goodness, we fall very short. I had a friend tell me this past week, it's like throwing rocks at the sun. That's what it's like to think about us falling short of the glory of God. Yeah, there are some of you out there, like you have like cannons for an arm. Like you could throw it, if you threw a rock in the direction of the sun, like you could really, really heave it up there. Some of you, yeah, not so much. Some of you, you're kind of clumsy. So if you threw it, knowing your luck, it would go up like 5 feet in the air, come back and hit you in the head and knock you unconscious. Like that's kind of how it works for you. There are varying degrees of how far we could throw a rock in the direction of the sun, but the truth is that we all fall very short because the sun is 93 million miles away. And that's us. That's our goodness compared to the glory of God. When I became a Christian, I realized these two things. I realized that I was a sinner, that I was messed up. And I realized that my life was falling way, way short of the glory and perfection and rightness and love of God. And I needed help. I needed a rescuer. I needed a doctor. I needed a friend. I needed someone who could love me no matter what. I needed someone who could save me from myself, who could offer guidance to my life, who could lead me out of the confusion. And so I turned to the very person, the only person who could do that, Jesus Christ. And isn't that part of the very definition of Christian? People admitting that they can't save themselves, they can't fix themselves and make themselves right. They need help, that they need hope. And they turn to Christ and they say, instead of leaning on my own life and trusting in myself and my ability to do this, I'm leaning the weight of my life onto Jesus Christ. And what if Christian, by very nature, we could just wear a t-shirt that said, Christian, someone who doesn't have it all figured out. See, maybe you're here and you've always kind of thought, well, when I get my act figured out, when I get it all together, then I'll turn to God. Which in truth, it's opposite. Because you don't have your act all together, because you don't have it all figured out, that's all the more reason that you need God. And don't get me wrong, Christians, I believe that our lives would be better if we followed what God said and we pursued Christ and we listened to Him and as He led us in the decisions we made for our lives and we obeyed the Bible and what it said. Our futures would be better. Our relationships would be better. In fact, I believe as a group, as a family of people who are Christians, that this should be one of our main goals. This should be one of the biggest things we pursue in our lives is going after Christ and what He says for us to do and the life that He lived. But do people fall? Yes. Do people get off track? Yes. And there are things that people haven't learned, and there are things that they have learned that they've forgotten. And they go down selfish paths, and they go down rebellious paths. But what if instead of us judging and criticizing those people, what if instead of us complaining that those kind of people are at church, what if we first looked at ourselves and we said, you know what? I don't have it all figured out. And what if instead of us complaining about the problem, we became a part of the solution? And we partnered with Jesus Christ in reaching people who don't have it all together. And we partnered with Inside Out in reaching people who don't have it all together. You know, what if for you, instead of looking at Inside Out and saying, you know what, I can't believe that person is here because they're so messed up, you looked and you said, hey, I'm celebrating, I'm so excited that that person is here because they're so messed up. Instead of saying, well, I can't believe that these people who don't have it figured out are at church, you should say, man, church is the place for people who don't have it all figured out. And for those of you who are Christians and you look at unbelievers and you just say, oh, they don't, you know, I can't believe they're coming in here and they have all these issues and all these problems. You look at them and you just say, man, I celebrate. This is a place for them. And you look at your friends who are Christians and you see them making mistakes and you see them falling and you're saying, man, I can't believe they're doing this. You looked and you said, man, they need to be at church. This is the place for them. I'm going to pray for them in their confusion. Man, I'm going to have some loving conversation when the time is appropriate and just say, hey, I love you and I'm here for you if you ever need to talk. Because here's the truth. Is the church full of people who don't have it all figured out? Yes. Am I one of those people? Yes. Is the church full of people who fail and who fall? Yes. Am I one of those people? Yes. But instead of just judging everybody else, instead of criticizing, instead of complaining about the problem, I want to partner with a God who reaches out to people who don't have it all together. And I want to be a part of the solution. I want to be a part of a place that says, you know what? You don't have it all together. You're messed up. You don't have it figured out. This is for you. Not just this church, but a God who's perfect and right and just, who wants a relationship with you.